Now we have some illustrations of this, these governmental problems. Until we can understand God as a ruler, it's hard for us to understand why God required a blood atonement, why God required the substitute offering. Well, one illustration is the story of Daniel in Babylon. He violated a royal decree. It said, you needed to worship the king, which was a bad law, but even bad laws, when violated, are punished, so that even the good laws are not going to be weakened with the lack of punishment. So now the king was a personal friend of Daniel and wanted to forgive Daniel. Okay, he violated a royal decree, and he was a friend of the king, and it says the king sought for a way to forgive Daniel. I mean, you can imagine the king, in agony over this situation, in this dilemma that he found himself in. On one hand, he's got his friend Daniel, that he cares about, that he wants to forgive, that he doesn't want to cast into the lion's den. He doesn't want to destroy him. Maybe he's even friends with his family, and just all the... I mean, that's a terrible situation. But on the other hand, he is the king, and he has a kingdom, and he has a law. Well, if he just forgave Daniel, what is his kingdom going to think? Well, the king's giving us bad laws. Look, he's not even enforcing them. Can we trust the legislation of the king? Can we trust what he does? Or if he just forgave him, he says, look how partial our king is. If I had broken that law, he would have sent me to the lion's den. But now that his friend broke the law, so again, questioning the character of the king, or questioning the wisdom of the king. If he just forgave Daniel, he would weaken his rule over his kingdom. So what's the king supposed to do? He said he sought for a way to forgive Daniel, and he found none. He didn't find an atonement. So Daniel had to go to the lion's den, and the Lord intervened. But he didn't find an atonement. But you see the dilemma that a ruler is in when his laws, the authority of his law is being questioned. And the same goes with Vashti, the queen, who, in the book of Esther, now she had disobeyed the king. The king called for her and she didn't come. And they had a concern that this would weaken his kingdom, that other women in the kingdom would see her example and disobey their own husbands. And they had this concern. So the king, not out of a bitterness towards Vashti, that was his wife. No doubt must have loved her. But out of this governmental or kingdom concern, he banished his queen. And he found a new one, Esther. Because if he didn't check his queen when she challenged his authority and disobeyed his law, it would weaken his kingdom. Now, there was no atonement made for Vashti. But now there are some examples of an atonement in an illustration. Have any of you seen the movie or read the book, The Count of Monte Cristo? And when he escapes from prison, and he's on this island, he's on the beach, and he runs into the pirates. And there's one pirate, Jacopo, and he had stolen from the rest of the pirates. Now here's the captain of the ship, who's got this Jacopo, who stole from him, when of course that's against the laws of the pirates, no stealing. And he has to do something about this, but he said he had a dilemma. The captain of the ship said, now a lot of the crew is friends with this guy, Jacopo, and they want me to show him some type of mercy. Now if I show him mercy, well then I'm in danger of my whole crew mutiny, because now they're not going to fear me. They're not going to respect my law. Now, if I just kill this man like he deserves in order to maintain my rule over the rest of the crew, well, because they were so prone to this man and wanted me to show him mercy and were friends with him, well, if I just execute him, now I'm in danger of a mutiny. So he was in a catch-22. So he made an arrangement with, I'm trying to remember the star of the movie, the guy who escaped from prison. Do you remember? Edmund. Yeah, Edmund. So he arranges with Edmund and Jacopo a knife fight and says, to Edmund, you actually provide a way of me to escape this dilemma. Now, you and Jacopo will fight to the death. One of you will win, one of you will lose, and whoever loses is going to be killed. Now, this provides the pirate, Jacopo, with a possible escape. If he wins the fight, well, now he can live. And they're not going to question the severity of the captain, because he didn't escape easily. He wasn't just simply forgiven. He was only released from his execution because he won this severe knife fight. But if Edmund wins and Jacopo dies, well, the crew will not say that, the captain didn't give Jacopo a fair chance. So this solved his catch-22 dilemma. He found what you would call sort of an atonement, a substitute to just the bare execution of the criminal, and now provided a way where a possible escape was available. Now you also see in the story, and I tell this on the universities and the campuses, the story of King Seleucus. And this is a very famous story. And he provided an atonement because King Seleucus was a king in Italy, and he saw that his kingdom was being weakened by adultery. It was rampant, and adultery was ruining his kingdom. When you have adultery, you have the breakdown of these families, you have spouses that are jealous, and even these men that are killing each other because people are sleeping with their wives, and I mean really adultery is really a danger to his kingdom. So he outlawed adultery for the good of his kingdom, for the good of the community. He outlawed adultery. Well, a law is nothing without punishment. I mean, there's no authority to the law. There's no force to the law. There's no law enforcement unless there's some type of punishment that gives the law power. So he assigned a very severe penalty. If this law is violated and a man found committing adultery, they would have both eyes removed. Things were fine for a while. No one was committing adultery, or at least not getting caught for it, until one day a man was brought before the king, brought into his court, charged with adultery, and it was the king's own son. Now, what is the king supposed to do? On one hand, he's a father. On one hand, he of course cares about his son, has a benevolent regard for his son. I mean, and that's the prince of the kingdom. Now, he's prone to show mercy. He's prone to forgive. He wants to find a way to forgive. But on the other hand, he's a king. He's a ruler. And this law was a good law. This law was for the good of his kingdom. And this king cares about his kingdom. Well, if he just forgave his son, his law will not be respected. The authority of his law will not be there. The kingdom will think, well, the king doesn't enforce his law. Or they'll question his character and say, look, he shows mercy to his son, but not to anyone else. So he's got this governmental concern now, this concern for his kingdom. He loves his kingdom and wants his law to be maintained, but he loves his son and wants to forgive him for breaking the law. Well, how could he do both? How could he maintain the authority of his law and at the same time forgive the one who broke the law? So he made an arrangement. He said, he would have one of his eyes removed. He would sacrifice one of his eyes and also take one eye from his son. Now this did not satisfy the letter of the law. The letter of the law required both eyes of the criminal. The letter of the law required that the criminal be punished to the full extent. That would be retributive justice, treating the man exactly as he deserves. So that didn't satisfy that. And it also certainly didn't bring any sadistic gratification to the king. That was not the point of this arrangement, to satisfy any vindictiveness inside the king. But what it did provide is an opportunity for the king to pardon, at least partially, his son, while still maintaining the authority of his law, and still declaring to his kingdom what he truly feels about his law and how he regards it. Now that he sacrificed one of his own eyes in order to save his son from the full execution that he deserved, for the full penalty that he deserved, now the kingdom would look upon the king and say he surely does respect his law. He surely does care about this law. And if we go and commit adultery, we have to face him. And we would have to face some severe consequences, because there's no guarantee that he would do that for anyone else. So God is in the same position.